The low, familiar drone of the Boeing's powerful engines usually served as a comforting lullaby, a steadfast promise of distant horizons and tranquil passage across vast azure skies. Yet, on this particular flight, high above the pristine, endless canvas of blue, that profound serenity was about to be irrevocably shattered. It began subtly, an almost imperceptible tremor, distinct from the usual cabin vibrations, first rippling through the sturdy fuselage. It was a precursor, a silent herald of the unfolding drama that would soon engulf every soul on board. Most passengers, deeply engrossed in their books, their in-flight movies, or simply lost in their own silent thoughts, initially dismissed it with a shrug, attributing it to a fleeting pocket of turbulence or a minor adjustment in altitude by the unseen pilots. They were oblivious, wrapped in their bubble of normalcy. However, the man in the aisle seat, a quiet figure named David, his strong, weathered hands cradling his sleeping daughter, felt it with an unsettling, almost primal precision. He was an ordinary single dad, or so everyone assumed, balancing the demands of parenthood with the quiet desperation of daily life. His phone, pressed firmly against his ear, was a lifeline in an increasingly uncertain world. His low voice, a steady, measured murmur against the background hum of the engines. His daughter, Lily, a fragile bloom of innocence, was completely oblivious. Her small chest rising and falling in the gentle rhythm of peaceful slumber. Her head nestled securely against the warmth of his chest. Her soft, knitted pink sweater contrasted sharply with the rugged texture of his tan leather jacket. A visual representation of their bond. A light blue blanket, pulled gently over her, seemed a flimsy, almost symbolic barrier against the unforeseen anxieties that were rapidly encroaching. David's gaze, a piercing blue that held a hint of deep thoughtfulness, was initially fixed straight ahead, an outward sign of controlled focus. But then, drawn by an unspoken instinct, an internal alarm bell, he slowly, deliberately turned his head towards the window. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as his eyes widened, the casual calm giving way to a nascent apprehension. What he saw there, against the breathtaking expanse of the sky, was not a picturesque cloud formation or a distant soaring bird. It was an impossibility, a jarring anomaly in the serene aerial landscape. The sharp, angular silhouette of a military fighter jet, flying dangerously, unnervingly close, its dark fuselage gleaming with an ominous luster under the brilliant afternoon sun. Then, another appeared, a shadow mimicking the first, and another, until four dark, menacing shapes were unmistakably visible, flying in a precise, intimidating formation alongside their civilian craft. Their proximity was not just unnerving, it was a brazen violation of air travel norms, their purpose utterly unknown and deeply terrifying. The woman seated next to him, Evelyn, her elegant green dress a vibrant splash against the muted cabin decor, had also noticed the subtle shift in light, the unusual dancing shadows that now permeated the cabin. Her initial reaction was mild curiosity, but as she followed David's gaze, her face, usually composed and serene, became etched with a mixture of bewilderment and growing alarm. Her eyes, wide with a dawning fear, scanned the cabin, seeking answers or perhaps just a shared sense of disbelief, a confirmation that what she was seeing was real. A ripple of nervous whispers began to spread through the rows behind them, like a growing tide of unease, a collective awakening to the impending crisis. The casual indifference that had defined the flight was dissolving, replaced by an unspoken, terrifying question hanging heavy in the air. David, however, remained outwardly calm, a pillar of puzzling composure. His grip on his phone was unwavering, his voice still low, though a new, urgent intensity now underscored his words. His call was clearly not a casual one. It was a conversation of immense gravity. Many passengers, including Evelyn, cast curious, slightly judgmental glances his way. Here was a man, seemingly ignoring the unfolding catastrophe, engrossed in a call while his child slept, oblivious to the jets. They silently judged his apparent detachment, perhaps even scoffed at his seeming irresponsibility. Little did anyone on board truly know, this quiet single dad, so seemingly ordinary, so easily dismissed, was about to reveal a secret that would not only compel the entire crew to stand at attention and address him with an unexpected title, but would also transform the mundane into the truly extraordinary, forever changing the way they perceived him, shattering their initial judgment and unveiling a hero hidden in plain sight. They would soon learn that the man they laughed at, or silently criticized, was their only hope. The initial ripple of unease, a mere tremor in the fabric of the flight, swiftly escalated into a palpable, suffocating wave of alarm within the confined space of the aircraft cabin. The quiet hum of conversation died, replaced by a growing crescendo of panic. Murmurs grew louder, punctuated by sharp gasps and anxious exclamations as more and more bewildered passengers caught sight of the uninvited, menacing escort outside their windows. Fingers trembled visibly as they pointed, tracing the sharp, angular outlines of the fighter jets against the seemingly infinite blue. Faces, once placid and relaxed, now contorted with a visceral mix of fear and utter confusion, formed a sea of bewildered expressions, all desperately seeking answers that none of the increasingly flustered flight attendants seemed able to provide. A young woman, just a few rows back, overcome by the escalating dread, began to sob quietly, her fragile cries echoing the growing collective terror. Simultaneously, the distinct, deeper, and more resonant rumble of the fighter jet engines began to penetrate the cabin, a low thrum that vibrated not just through the air, but through the floor and seats, making the stark reality of the situation impossible to ignore. It was an intrusive, unsettling sound that promised nothing good. A flight attendant, a seasoned veteran named Maria, her typically reassuring smile now a thin, strained line of professional pretense, moved quickly down the aisle. She spoke in hushed, yet firm tones, attempting with all her might to project an air of calm she clearly did not feel, trying desperately to assuage the fears of a distressed woman who clutched her armrest with white, trembling knuckles. "Please remain calm, ladies and gentlemen. Everything is under control," Maria repeated, her voice a forced whisper, but her words lacked any genuine conviction, betraying the profound turmoil beneath her professional facade. Her eyes darted nervously, reflecting the internal chaos. Amidst this rapidly escalating chaos, David remained an inexplicable anchor of baffling, almost arrogant composure. His dark eyes, unwavering and resolutely focused, were fixed on the middle distance, perhaps processing the immense gravity of his phone conversation, or perhaps observing the jets with an expert's chilling discernment. He continued to speak softly, almost conspiratorially, into the receiver, his words a barely audible murmur, a stark and perplexing counterpoint to the rising crescendo of panic around him. To many, his apparent detachment, his unyielding focus on his phone, seemed not just baffling but profoundly disrespectful, an almost cruel indifference to the collective fear gripping the cabin. "Can you believe him?" a passenger muttered loudly, his voice thick with indignation, gesturing wildly towards David. "On the phone, with fighter jets outside. He acts like nothing is happening." The sentiment was clear. He was being judged, criticized, and silently, or not so silently, scorned for his actions, or lack thereof. Lily, his daughter, remained in her blissful, unaware slumber, her gentle breaths a testament to the fragile safety her father was desperately trying to maintain, even as the world around them threatened to unravel into utter pandemonium. Her tiny hand, curled loosely near his, was a stark and tender reminder of the precious, vulnerable cargo he carried. Evelyn, sitting beside him, found herself utterly unable to tear her gaze away. She watched David with a potent mixture of intense curiosity and growing, almost sickening apprehension. Her initial assessment of him, perhaps a quiet, slightly distant single father, was rapidly being challenged, unraveling before her very eyes. His unnerving calmness, his complete absorption in his urgent call, made him an enigma, a puzzle she felt compelled to solve. She found her gaze flicking repeatedly, almost compulsively, between the unsettling, ever-closer sight of the fighter jets and David's stoic, unreadable profile, searching for any crack in his composure, any telltale sign of fear that mirrored her own escalating dread. The very air in the cabin had thickened, charged with unspoken questions and a primal, overwhelming sense of vulnerability. No one, least of all Evelyn, had any inkling of the extraordinary purpose behind David's unwavering focus, or the immense crushing burden resting squarely on his shoulders as he navigated a crisis far beyond the comprehension of ordinary passengers, a crisis that he was, in fact, directly and critically involved in. They simply saw a man on a phone, seemingly ignoring the world burning around him, a profound judgment they would soon come to regret with a startling intensity. The atmosphere in the cabin, thick with an almost suffocating fear and profound uncertainty, pressed down heavily on every soul aboard, each passenger feeling the invisible weight of the impending unknown. The collective anxiety was no longer a mere feeling. It was a living entity, its chilling tendrils reaching into every corner, every whispered conversation, every silent prayer. Passengers, their faces pale and drawn with the strain of dread, exchanged frantic, desperate glances, a silent, urgent communication of their shared, terrifying predicament. Whispers of, "What's happening?" and "Are we under attack?" escalated into hushed, yet urgent questions that found no satisfactory answers, only more worried shrugs and fearful shivers. The flight attendants, while valiantly attempting to maintain their professional demeanor, moved with a visible urgency that betrayed their own inner turmoil, their eyes darting nervously towards the windows and the unyielding, menacing formation of the fighter jets. Their earlier attempts at reassurance now sounded hollow, utterly devoid of conviction, their strained voices barely concealing their own mounting apprehension. David, meanwhile, remained a peculiar, bewildering island of resolute calm in the swelling, turbulent sea of panic. His phone call, which had begun with a measured intensity and a quiet sense of purpose, now seemed to deepen in gravity, the stakes clearly rising with every passing second. He subtly shifted his weight in the uncomfortable airplane seat, a minute, almost imperceptible adjustment that betrayed an underlying, immense tension, his broad shoulders squaring as he listened intently to the voice on the other end of the line. His expression, previously one of controlled focus and quiet determination, now hardened slightly, a subtle tightening around his mouth and eyes that spoke volumes of profound, escalating concern, of vital decisions being made. His words, though still low and carefully modulated, carried an undeniable weight, a tone of quiet command that hinted at a responsibility far, far greater than that of a mere, ordinary passenger. "I understand the implications, but the primary objective remains unchanged. We cannot deviate from the plan, not now," he murmured into the receiver, his voice barely audible above the rising hum of the engines and the nervous chatter, yet filled with an unwavering resolve. This was clearly a man accustomed to making life-or-death decisions. Beside him, little Lily, perhaps unconsciously sensing the pervasive unease and the subtle vibrations of fear radiating through the cabin, stirred softly in her sleep. A faint frown, like a fleeting, delicate shadow, creased her innocent brow, a testament to the fragile boundary between wakefulness and slumber, and the uncanny way even deep sleep can be permeated by the anxieties of the external world. David's gaze softened for a brief, fleeting moment as he looked down at her, a profound, aching tenderness momentarily replacing the steely resolve in his eyes, a silent, powerful promise of unwavering protection passing between father and daughter. He gently adjusted the light blue blanket covering her, a small, tender, almost automatic gesture amidst the rapidly escalating crisis. Evelyn, now entirely captivated and deeply intrigued by David's enigmatic behavior, leaned slightly forward, her desperate curiosity overpowering her initial paralyzing fear. She strained her ears, trying to catch fragments of David's intense, cryptic phone conversation, piecing together snippets of technical jargon and urgent directives that seemed utterly out of place on a civilian flight. Coordinates confirmed, she thought she heard, her heart beginning to pound faster, and later, on final approach, the words hung heavy in the charged air, disjointed but loaded with an immense unspoken meaning, each syllable suggesting a hidden world of danger and urgency. The sight of the fighter jets, unwavering in their disciplined, almost predatory escort, was a constant, stark, and terrifying reminder of the unprecedented situation unfolding around them. They were not just a threat, they were a formidable presence, a watchful, almost predatory force. Suddenly, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, his tone now noticeably strained. the pretense of calm completely gone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently being accompanied by military aircraft as a precautionary measure. We will provide more information as it becomes available." The announcement, meant to reassure, only fueled the rampant speculation and dramatically increased the cabin's palpable fear, replacing doubt with stark terror. Yet, David remained utterly engrossed in his private, high-stakes struggle, a silent, monumental battle being waged over the phone line, a desperate negotiation against unseen odds. He had to convey a critical message, one that could not be delayed, even as the world around him seemed to descend into chaos, all while safeguarding the most precious cargo he carried, his innocent, sleeping daughter. The fragile facade of order within the airplane cabin had not merely crumbled, it had completely disintegrated, replaced by a raw, unbridled clamor of distressed voices that reverberated through the pressurized space. The low hum of anxiety had intensified into a deafening cacophony of fear, each shriek and sob adding to the unsettling symphony. Passengers, no longer able to simply whisper their anxieties, were now standing frantically in their seats, their gestures wild and desperate, pointing with trembling fingers at the windows where the 4 fighter jets held their unyielding, ominous presence. The sight of their dark, metallic forms against the vast, indifferent blue sky was a chilling, unforgettable spectacle, a visual representation of utter helplessness. A woman a few rows ahead had abandoned all pretense of composure, openly weeping into her hands, her gut-wrenching sobs a piercing counterpoint to the mounting, unbearable tension. Children, sensing the pervasive, contagious fear of their parents, began to cry, their innocent wails adding another heartbreaking layer to the unsettling symphony of panic, amplifying the feeling of absolute loss of control. Flight attendants, their rigorous training stretched to its absolute breaking point, moved with a frantic, almost desperate urgency, their faces drawn with a mix of profound frustration and genuine deep-seated concern. They struggled visibly to maintain any semblance of control amidst the rapidly unraveling situation, their efforts largely futile against the tide of collective terror. Amidst this disarray, this descent into near anarchy, David remained a striking, bewildering anomaly. His figure, seated firmly and calmly, seemed to absorb the surrounding chaos, his posture now infused with an air of subtle, almost imperceptible command. Though his voice on the phone remained remarkably low and controlled, a testament to immense discipline, there was an unmistakable, profound shift in his demeanor, a quiet, potent authority that starkly belied his casual civilian attire. He was no longer simply listening, he was directing, commanding, his words punctuated by precise pauses that clearly indicated crucial, rapid-fire responses from the other end of the line. "Understood. Maintain distance, but be ready for my signal. Do not engage unless explicitly ordered," he murmured into the receiver, his blue eyes scanning the vast horizon beyond the jets with a hawk-like intensity. Lily, his daughter, her small, innocent form a beacon of utter vulnerability, was now cradled even more protectively in his arms. One of his strong hands, no longer merely supporting her, was a gentle yet firm shield across her back, his thumb rubbing small, reassuring circles, a silent, powerful promise of safety. This tender gesture was almost automatic, a deeply ingrained reflex of profound paternal love, even as his brilliant mind wrestled with complex, high-stakes information that could determine the fate of all on board. It was at this precise moment, the crescendo of panic reaching its emotional peak, that a stern flight attendant, Maria, her dark uniform pressed impeccably, but her face etched with exhaustion and growing visible impatience, approached David. Her lips were a thin, disapproving line, her brows deeply furrowed in a clear display of unmasked displeasure. She raised her hand, palm out, a universal, unambiguous sign to halt, clearly intending to interrupt his call and enforce the rigid no-phone regulations that now seemed so utterly trivial, so ludicrously irrelevant, in the terrifying face of actual fighter jets. "Sir, I must insist you terminate your call immediately," she announced, her voice strained but firm, cutting sharply through the cacophony of cabin noise, momentarily silencing a few rows. "This is a serious safety hazard. Don't you see what's happening outside? Your actions are irresponsible." Her tone, edged with a desperate sense of duty and thinly veiled public judgment, implied that his actions were not only flagrantamente against policy, but also deeply irresponsible, especially with a child under his supposed care. The implication of overt public humiliation hung heavy in the air, a spotlight on David. Yet David, his gaze unwavering, merely held up a single, calm finger, a silent, resolute request for a moment more, conveying an urgency and importance that unmistakably surpassed the flight attendant's authority, hinting at a truth far beyond their understanding, but one he could not yet reveal. His difficulty was immense, a monumental struggle, balancing his critical, clandestine mission with the increasingly demanding and public pressure to conform to mundane, irrelevant rules, all while protecting his most precious loved one. The stage was now irrevocably set for a direct confrontation that would challenge everyone's deeply held assumptions. The flight attendant, Maria, having delivered her stern and public admonition, retreated slightly, her lips still pressed into a thin, disapproving line, but not before casting a final, intensely suspicious glance at David. Her words, sharp and cutting, had pierced through the general din of the cabin, making David the immediate, unwilling focus of several disapproving, critical stares. A few passengers, emboldened by Maria's stance, openly muttered about his perceived disregard for safety, their judgmental whispers reaching his ears like a barrage of tiny, stinging arrows. They saw his calm as arrogance, his focus as indifference. Yet, David remained an unyielding statue of almost supernatural composure, an anomaly in the heart of widespread panic. A close-up on his face revealed a profound dichotomy, a silent battle raging within. His blue eyes, usually calm and reflective, now held a deep, complex mix of unwavering resolve and poignant, aching concern. A small muscle twitched almost imperceptibly in his strong jaw, the only outward fleeting sign of the immense internal pressure he was under, a testament to his superhuman self-control. His lips were pressed into a thin, determined line, a silent vow, but his breath remained steady, controlled, almost unnervingly regular, a direct testament to years of rigorous, disciplined training. He knew, with absolute certainty, the paramount importance of this precise moment, and the absolute necessity of maintaining his impenetrable facade, of not breaking character under any circumstances. His internal struggle was immense, a constant, agonizing battle between duty and paternal instinct. He longed with every fiber of his being to reassure his daughter, to hold her even closer and whisper words of comfort and safety into her ear. But he couldn't break character, couldn't, not yet, reveal the true, urgent life-or-death nature of his clandestine call. Every second he spent on the phone felt like an eternity, an agonizing stretch of time, but every single second was also critically vital to securing their collective safety, and indeed, the safety of everyone else on board this doomed flight. Lily, as if sensing the shifting, volatile energies around her even in her deep slumber, stirred slightly on his lap, a soft, innocent movement. Her tiny fingers twitched, almost reaching for his hand, a silent, unconscious plea for connection and comfort, but ultimately remained curled safely within the warmth of her soft blanket, protected by his embrace. David's gaze softened momentarily as he looked down at her, a wave of profound paternal love washing over him, briefly, fleetingly eclipsing the immense urgency of his mission. He gently adjusted the light blue blanket, his touch feather light, a silent, fierce promise of unwavering protection he was fighting tooth and nail to uphold. Evelyn, who had absorbed the full force of the public shaming directed at David, now found her initial, simplistic judgment of him beginning to falter, to crack under the weight of his inexplicable composure. Her expression was a careful, shifting balance of lingering doubt, growing, almost obsessive curiosity, and a faint, almost involuntary hint of profound admiration that she couldn't suppress. She observed his unwavering composure, the precise, almost ritualistic way he held his phone, the subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the intensity and cadence of his low-toned conversation. She began to notice the small, telling details, the almost military way his eyes constantly scanned the horizon beyond the menacing fighter jets, the almost unnatural precision in his posture despite his casual attire. The cabin's diffused light reflected subtly off the textured surface of David's tan leather jacket, highlighting the sturdy, protective material, a silent echo of the man's own unyielding resilience. His phone call continued, a dense, rapid-fire exchange of what sounded like highly coded language and urgent, complex instructions, entirely unintelligible to Evelyn, but clearly of immense global significance. He would pause, listen intently, his brow furrowed, then offer a concise, authoritative response, his tone firm and uncompromising, completely at odds with his quiet, unassuming demeanor. The jets, unmoving, relentless, remained a constant, unsettling presence, their dark forms a stark, terrifying reminder of the escalating stakes. As Evelyn watched, completely mesmerized, David made a small, decisive nod into the phone, signaling understanding or agreement, a silent resolve hardening in his intense blue eyes. He was making a decision, a pivotal, life-altering choice that would very soon unravel the profound mystery surrounding him and irrevocably redefine everyone's perception of the quiet single dad in the tan jacket, revealing a truth far more extraordinary than anyone could have imagined. The tension in the cabin had intensified to an almost unbearable degree, a thick, suffocating blanket of pervasive fear that seemed to press down on everyone, stealing their breath and crushing their hope. A flight attendant, her face pale and her posture rigid with a desperate attempt at maintaining professionalism, spoke into the intercom. Her voice, usually calm and composed, trembled ever so slightly, betraying the profound anxiety that gripped her, rendering her efforts at reassurance almost futile. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your flight attendant speaking. We kindly ask you to remain in your seats with your seatbelts securely fastened. We are currently experiencing an unscheduled military escort for immediate security reasons. The captain will provide more details shortly." Her words, meant to calm, only served to highlight the unprecedented, terrifying nature of the situation, adding a layer of official gravity to the raw panic. Over the muffled speakers, the pilot's voice could then be heard, attempting with all his might to project reassurance. But an underlying tremor of tension was undeniably present, cutting through the thin veneer of official composure he tried to project. His message was brief, confirming the escort but offering no comforting explanation for its unsettling presence or the specific, alarming nature of the security reasons. This glaring lack of detail only fueled the rampant speculation and dramatically increased the cabin's palpable fear, allowing imaginations to run wild with worst-case scenarios. Passengers desperately attempted to use their cell phones, but signals flickered violently and died, leaving them feeling even more isolated and utterly vulnerable. Completely cut off from any outside contact or information, trapped in their airborne cage. The flight attendants moved through the cabin with a forced, almost robotic efficiency, distributing small bottles of water, their movements betraying a nervous, frantic energy as they tried to address the escalating, widespread panic. Yet, their own fear was starkly evident in their darting eyes and strained, unnatural smiles. David, meanwhile, continued his phone conversation, a low, urgent murmur that seemed to deepen in complexity with every passing second, suggesting the immense weight of the decisions being made. He was no longer simply listening. He was actively engaged, fully absorbed, his words punctuated by precise pauses for detailed, critical responses from the other end of the line. He made a subtle, precise gesture with his free hand, a small, almost imperceptible movement, as if directing an unseen, highly trained team, or coordinating complex, high-level information in real time. His gaze was fixed intently out the window, observing the unwavering fighter jets with an expert's keen, discerning eye, assessing their movements, their positioning, confirming visual on target, maintain defensive posture, prepare for potential rapid descent, he muttered into the receiver, his voice betraying no hint of the immense urgency or the profound danger. Evelyn, now completely absorbed and utterly bewildered, watched him with a hawk-like intensity, her brow furrowed deeply in concentration. She tried desperately to piece together the tantalizing fragments of a conversation she could only partially hear, the intricate military jargon tantalizingly just out of her reach. She caught tantalizing glimpses of words like airspace breach, interception protocols, and asset protection, words that sounded far too grave, far too ominous, for a routine commercial flight. The jets, in a synchronized, almost choreographed maneuver, shifted their position slightly, their dark forms now appearing even closer, their presence more imposing, more overtly menacing. The sound of their engines, a deep, resonant hum, vibrated through the plane, shaking it gently, a constant, unsettling reminder of their immediate proximity and overwhelming power. Little Lily, stirring briefly on David's lap, let out a soft, sleepy sigh, her eyes briefly fluttering open, then closing again, her innocence still largely protected by the comforting depths of her slumber. David offered a reassuring, almost imperceptible nod to his phone, signaling understanding or agreement. His face a mask of impenetrable professional resolve. He was a man with a plan, intimately connected to a force far greater than the collective fear of the passengers, a silent, formidable defender in the very heart of a brewing storm. The feeling of isolation and vulnerability for the passengers was profound and deeply unsettling, a stark contrast to David, who seemed connected to something larger, something that held the absolute key to their immediate fate. His quiet actions, his focused intent, painted a clear picture of a man who was not merely observing the crisis, but actively and expertly managing it. A profound truth that was slowly, painstakingly, beginning to reveal itself to Evelyn, and, unconsciously, to the rest of the frightened passengers. A sudden harsh flash of brilliant, almost blinding light, reflecting sharply off the polished canopy of one of the fighter jets, momentarily flooded the entire cabin, illuminating the anxious, terrified faces within. It was a disorienting, almost violent glare that brutally underscored the perilously close proximity of the military aircraft, and its transient, searing intensity seemed to burn the rising fear deeper into the minds and souls of the utterly bewildered passengers. The pilot's voice, now undeniably strained and completely devoid of its earlier pretense of composure, crackled over the intercom once more, his words clipped, urgent, and laced with an unmistakable sense of dread. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are entering a restricted security zone. Please remain calm. We have initiated Protocol Alpha 7, Immediate Action Sequence." The ominous mention of a specific protocol, but without any further calming explanation, only amplified the terror, painting a grim, chilling picture of an escalating, unseen threat that was now directly impacting their lives. David's face, usually an impenetrable mask of controlled composure, was now visibly strained, the edges of his immense self-control beginning to fray. A grim, almost imperceptible line was etched deeply between his brows, a silent, eloquent testament to the immense, crushing pressure weighing upon him. His intense blue eyes, though still focused, held a flicker of deep, personal concern as he instinctively, protectively pulled his sleeping daughter, Lily, slightly tighter to his chest. It was a fierce, protective, primal gesture, an unconscious reinforcement of his paternal duty, a father's unwavering promise amidst the rapidly escalating chaos. He knew, with a chilling, absolute certainty, that the situation outside was becoming critically unstable, entering a dangerously volatile phase. On his phone, his voice was now barely a whisper, yet it carried an undeniable undercurrent of steely authority and desperate urgency. He seemed to be arguing or intensely debating, his words firm and resolute, pushing back fiercely against an unseen, formidable force on the other end of the line. A clash of wills at the highest level. Negative. I am asserting direct command. We are not compromising the asset, not under any circumstances, he murmured, his voice low but sharp, decisive, indicating he was unilaterally overriding a direct critical order from a higher authority. The immense gravity of this secret decision, one made entirely on his own initiative and with potentially severe repercussions, weighed heavily on him, evident in the tautness of his posture. "Stand down, sir. We have this," he heard faintly from the receiver, a distinct, authoritative male voice attempting to assert control, but David pushed back, his resolve unyielding. "Not an option. I am the asset protector. My child is the primary collateral. I'm going in." This moment of profound protagonist difficulty was excruciating, a true test of his character and his resolve. He faced the agonizing dilemma of explicitly defying direct orders for what he believed was the greater good, for the safety of everyone, all while maintaining his cover and, most importantly, ensuring his beloved daughter's safety above all else. His face showed the immense strain, the difficult, lonely choice he was making, a burden he carried alone. Evelyn, now fully engrossed and thoroughly bewildered by the incredible turn of events, tried to discreetly listen, catching fragments that chilled her to the bone, sending shivers down her spine. Airspace integrity compromised. Threat assessment critical. Extraction point secured. Her entire perception of the quiet, unassuming single dad was being shattered, piece by agonizing piece, rebuilt into something far more awe-inspiring and terrifying. A child's piercing cry from a few rows back echoed through the cabin, amplifying the general, widespread panic, a sound that tore at David's already strained composure, reminding him of his fragile cargo. The plane suddenly encountered a slight air pocket, causing a minor stomach-lurching drop. A fleeting moment of freefall, and then immediately stabilized. But the brief, unexpected jolt sent a fresh, sickening wave of terror through the already traumatized passengers. David's hand instinctively tightened on Lily's arm. A silent, fierce promise of unwavering protection, a desperate plea to the universe. He closed his eyes for a brief, fortifying moment, taking a deep, controlled breath, steeling himself for the inevitable confrontation or the momentous decision that lay ahead, knowing there was no turning back. He knew, with absolute, unwavering certainty, that he had to take control, regardless of the severe consequences for himself. The fate of everyone on board, and perhaps far more than just this flight, rested squarely on his shoulders, and he was ready to bear that immense burden alone, a true hero in the making. A profound quietude, almost supernatural in its suddenness, began to descend upon the airplane cabin, a subtle but palpable shift in the atmosphere that slowly began to replace the earlier, deafening cacophony of fear. It was as if the very air itself had held its breath in agonizing suspense, and now, cautiously, tentatively, it exhaled, bringing with it a fragile hope. David, his intense conversation having reached its pivotal, life-altering conclusion, slowly lowered his phone, placing it with a deliberate, almost reverent motion onto his lap, his mission momentarily complete. The device, which had been his constant companion, his instrument of crisis, now seemed to settle, its immediate, critical purpose fulfilled, its screen dark and silent. His face, previously a taut canvas of intense focus and strained, agonizing concern, now revealed a look of grim satisfaction, a hard-won victory etched deeply into the corners of his intense blue eyes, mingled with a lingering, profound sense of hard-earned relief. He glanced out the window, his gaze meeting the dark, imposing shapes of the fighter jets that had been their unwelcome escorts. In that precise moment, a subtle, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement passed between him and the lead pilot of the fighter formation, a silent, profound communication of a critical mission accomplished, an unspoken understanding of a shared, arduous, and now successfully concluded task. Simultaneously, a senior flight attendant, Maria, her back momentarily to the camera, her posture an image of strained, almost breaking professionalism, received an urgent, crisp, and clearly astonishing message through her earpiece. Her entire body instantly stiffened, a jolt of startled, profound recognition passing like an electric current through her frame. Her eyes widened in disbelief, processing the rapid, paradigm-shifting information she was receiving, and her previous annoyance, her frustration with David's perceived insubordination and irresponsibility, evaporated instantly, replaced by utter disbelief, and then, profoundly, adorning overwhelming respect. She looked directly at David, her gaze unwavering, a silent apology, perhaps, for her earlier, hasty judgment, and a dawning, powerful understanding of his true, extraordinary role in their crisis. The subtle, heavy tension in the cabin, though not entirely dissipated, began to visibly ease. Passengers, though still wary and alert, their nerves frayed, began to notice the distinct, remarkable change in the crew's demeanor. The flight attendants, who moments before had been frantic, visibly anxious, and overwhelmed, now moved with a new, quiet purpose, their faces reflecting a dawning, collective understanding that the immediate, terrifying crisis was definitively passing. A moment later, the pilot's voice, now remarkably clear, calm, and infused with an unmistakable sense of profound gratitude, came over the intercom, cutting sharply through the remaining nervous whispers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I am immensely pleased to announce that the situation has been fully and successfully resolved. We are now completely safe, and we will continue our journey without further incident to our destination. We owe a profound, immeasurable debt of gratitude to an unscheduled but absolutely vital intervention from a very special anonymous passenger on board." He did not explicitly name David, but the implication was unmistakable, the words hanging heavy in the air, transforming the lingering, pervasive fear into bewildered awe, a sense of collective wonder. Outside the window, the fighter jets subtly adjusted their formation once more. But this time, it was a less menacing, more protective, almost ceremonial shift. They still maintained their close proximity, but now it felt like an honor guard, a protective shield rather than an intimidation, a silent salute. David, with a gentle, practiced ease, carefully repositioned his sleeping daughter, Lily, ensuring her continued comfort and unbroken slumber. She remained blissfully oblivious to the dramatic, life-threatening shift in their circumstances, a small, innocent island in the wake of the averted catastrophe. Evelyn, next to him, watched the unfolding, astonishing scene, completely stunned and utterly mesmerized. She covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide with disbelief and a dawning, profound comprehension. All her initial judgments of the quiet single dad, all her skepticism and criticism, vanished instantly, replaced by a profound, overwhelming respect and deep wonder. A palpable wave of collective, overwhelming relief began to spread through the cabin, slowly but surely replacing the terror as the true, incredible nature of the events, and David's absolutely crucial, heroic role began to unfold before their very eyes. The passenger who had chastised him earlier now looked utterly bewildered, his earlier anger replaced by a look of profound confusion, and perhaps a hint of shame for his hasty conclusions. The turn was complete. The hero was about to be officially and publicly revealed. A profound quietude, almost sacred in its depth, settled over the cabin. The breath of everyone on board seemed suspended, caught in a collective moment of reverent shock and overwhelming awe. The tumultuous clamor and cacophony of fear that had dominated minutes before had been completely replaced by a stillness, almost hallowed, punctuated only by the soft, ragged murmurs of profound relief and utter astonishment. The senior flight attendant, Maria, with her face still a little pale, but now irrevocably transformed by an expression of deep, unshakable respect and admiration, approached David with slow, deliberate steps. Her posture was rigidly erect, a military-like reverence implicit in her bearing, a stark contrast to her earlier frustration. She gracefully bowed her head slightly, a solemn, deferential gesture that no one, least of all David, had ever expected. Then, in a moment that bordered on the truly unbelievable, she turned and, with a subtle but commanding signal, gestured to the rest of the cabin crew. One by one, the flight attendants, including those who moments before had criticized David for his apparent indifference or for flagrantly violating regulations by being on his phone, began to quietly, formally align themselves in the aisle. Their faces, previously etched with anxiety and thinly veiled frustration, now exhibited an astonishing mixture of profound admiration, deep gratitude, and a palpable, burning sense of shame for their hasty, unjust judgments. They positioned themselves in a crisp, organized formation, each person standing at rigid attention, their gazes fixed with unwavering respect on David, the unexpected hero. The atmosphere was charged with a palpable, almost electric emotion, a silent, powerful recognition of the unassuming, improbable hero who was humbly seated among them. Maria, with tears glistening, unbidden in her eyes, took another step forward, her voice clear, strong, and deeply resonant, echoing through the now utterly silenced cabin. "Sir," she began, the single word loaded with an immense weight and a profound respect that transcended any formal title or military rank. "On behalf of this entire crew and every single soul aboard this aircraft, please accept our deepest, most heartfelt gratitude. Your incredibly swift and courageous actions averted an unimaginable catastrophe. The declaration, delivered with such raw gravity and overwhelming emotion, absolutely electrified the cabin, sending shivers down every spine. The pilot, his voice now completely calm, authoritative, and infused with a clear, undeniable note of profound gratitude and genuine admiration, transmitted a final message over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we can now unequivocally confirm that the security situation has been fully and successfully resolved. We are all completely safe, and we will continue our flight to our destination without any further incident. A profound debt of gratitude is owed to a very special anonymous passenger on board who, with their extraordinary courage and unparalleled expertise, single-handedly ensured the safety of everyone. The passengers, initially confused and bewildered by the unprecedented alignment of the crew, quickly, collectively, understood the immense magnitude of the moment. Murmurs of disbelief and stunned surprise rapidly transformed into hushed whispers of awe and profound admiration. David, still with his daughter, Lily, who remained peacefully asleep in his arms, offered a small, humble, almost imperceptible nod to the crew, acknowledging their respect without seeking undue attention or praise. He did not revel in the spotlight. His acceptance was quiet, dignified, the unassuming demeanor of a man who simply, naturally, fulfilled his duty. Evelyn, seated beside him, covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide with a profound mixture of disbelief and dawning, overwhelming comprehension. All her initial judgments of the quiet single dad, all her preconceived notions, completely disappeared, replaced by an immense respect and deep wonder. That single father, whom she had momentarily seen as distracted, irresponsible, or out of touch, was, in reality, a true savior, a man of immense hidden power, profound intelligence, and crushing responsibility. The fighter jets, as if in a final, majestic flourish to a military presentation, executed a last, elegant flyby, their dark, sleek silhouettes passing rapidly across the windows one final time, before gracefully peeling away and disappearing into the distant, endless sky, leaving behind only a limitless expanse of clear blue and a profound silence that spoke volumes of a great danger averted. David, the man who had maintained an impossible calm in the very heart of the storm, simply looked down at his daughter, a soft, tender, weary smile finally adorning his lips. The immediate danger had passed, and he had, against all odds, protected her, along with everyone else. The mission was accomplished. The earlier, unspoken humiliation had given way to undeniable honor, and the quiet, internal scoffing to a profound, lasting respect. The airplane cabin, once a tumultuous cauldron of raw panic and swift, unthinking judgment, had finally returned to a serene, almost ethereal calm. A gentle, reassuring hum from the engines now seemed to serve as a genuine lullaby, and the warm, golden sunlight streaming through the windows bathed the interior in a soft, welcoming glow. However, though the immediate, terrifying chaos had completely subsided and a surface calm had undeniably re-established itself, a powerful undercurrent of reverence, almost palpable in its intensity, now permeated the air. It was directed silently, respectfully, toward the man in the aisle row, the unexpected hero. David, the very epicenter of the storm that had so dramatically passed, sat peacefully, his beloved daughter, Lily, still sleeping soundly and deeply in his arms. Her innocent, undisturbed presence was a quiet, unshakable anchor of his personal world, a constant reminder of why he had pushed himself to the absolute limit. She was the profound reason for his immense courage, the powerful, relentless force driving his discreet, heroic actions. Passengers who before had openly or silently cast him disapproving, critical glances, who perhaps had judged him harshly for his enigmatic calm or for seemingly being irresponsibly engrossed on his phone amidst the escalating chaos, now offered shy, apologetic smiles, their eyes expressing a newfound, profound understanding and a deep, genuine respect. Some, emboldened by the truth, even risked a respectful nod, a silent, heartfelt acknowledgement of the extraordinary, unbelievable truth that had been so dramatically revealed. Evelyn, the woman seated directly beside him, who had witnessed the entire astonishing reviravolta of events from the closest possible vantage point, now observed him with an expression that went far beyond simple admiration. Her eyes, filled with profound respect, shone brightly, and she offered a genuinely warm, admiring smile, all her initial skepticism and her hasty, prejudiced judgments completely replaced by an undeniable, heartfelt reverence. She saw not merely a single father, but a protector, a true hero, an improbable savior whose quiet, unassuming demeanor had hidden a formidable inner strength, a sharp, brilliant intelligence, and immense, life-saving capabilities. The small, innocent Lily, blissfully oblivious to the entire, terrifying drama that she had slept through, continued to be a poignant symbol of pure innocence, a vivid, living reminder of the powerful, unyielding motivation behind her father's heroic, selfless actions. The incident, without a shadow of a doubt, would immediately become a whispered legend among the passengers for the rest of the flight, and undoubtedly far beyond. A remarkable story of a common, ordinary flight that was transformed into something truly extraordinary, saved by a quiet, unassuming hero. But the true, deeper lesson of that unforgettable day was not just about the harrowing aerial crisis. It was about the quick, superficial judgments that people so easily and often carelessly make. They had seen a single dad who appeared to be struggling, perhaps distracted or even irresponsible, but they had never, ever glimpsed the profound strength, the razor-sharp intelligence, and the extraordinary, hidden capabilities concealed beneath his calm, ordinary surface. It is a powerful, timeless reminder that true heroes often do not wear capes or gleaming uniforms in public. Instead, they blend seamlessly into the everyday fabric of life, patiently waiting for the precise moment when their unique, vital skills are desperately needed. This quiet, unassuming man, utterly dedicated to his daughter, was a living testament to that hidden power, a secret defender, a silent guardian. And so, our incredible story draws to its close, a compelling tale of prejudice, unexpected courage, and quiet heroism that unfolded thousands of feet above the earth. It truly makes us pause and think, doesn't it, about the countless hidden stories behind each face, each tranquil moment, each seemingly ordinary person we encounter in our lives. If this profound story has touched your heart and made you think twice before judging a book by its cover, please show your appreciation and support our mission. Take a moment to like this video. 3. Share your insightful thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in that terrifying situation? And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more incredibly inspiring stories and unforgettable narratives that constantly remind us of the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary. Your invaluable support helps us to bring more compelling, inspirational content like this directly to you. Thank you for watching.